Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Monsters Den. It's Thursday night. Thanks for joining, everybody. It's Hammer time once again by popular demand. We love our hammer. We know you guys do as well. We're going to periodically do these type of things. Today is all about picking a favorite hammer, kind of like one-off film. So not a film that's part of like a series. So not a Frankenstein film, not a Dracula film, not a Quatermass film, not a Mummy film, not a Karnstein film. That is kind of like a one-off, right? We've all done that. We're going to talk a little bit about each film here, but before we do, let me introduce the crew. We got all the way from Scotland. It's like 4 a.m. or something like that over in his time. Well, maybe not quite that late. Davy Gallagher's here with his cool Vinegar Syndrome hat. We got Craig Kaminski in the house. Craig and I are both feeling a little chilly here on the East Coast. Same thing with Mr. Warehouse himself, Dan Brown.
Asshole. It's not right.
And of course, Mr. Jamie Laszlo.
What's going on, folks?
How's everybody doing?
All right.
Cool.
All right.
So, yeah, we're going to talk about these kind of cool one-off Hammer films. There's so many to choose from. Davey, what's the last count of all the Hammer films that have been made?
Oh, crikey. I mean, if you include the pre-Hammer horror ones, it's over 200. But in terms of from Quatermass up to modern day, I think you're about 120 odds.
Yeah.
With the last one being just last year, Dr. Jekyll. So,
Yep.
yeah.
So when you think about all that kind of like the franchise or series films, let's say there's 30 of those, you still got a lot of other films to choose from. So we had plenty to go through and take a look and see which ones we want to talk about. And in some instances, these may be longtime favorites of ours, or in some instances, these may be the first time we're seeing these. So either way, always fun to revisit Hammer. And I'm going to start us off with Mr. Laszlo, who's going to introduce his film that he watched recently again, or maybe watched for the first time.
First time, Pete.
Nice. There you go.
I have some favorites. A lot of them are not horror movies. Some favorites are Plague of the Zombies, Devil Rides Out, which I'm sure we're going to hear about in a bit. Cash on Demand, I love. Die, 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 My Darling. Don't utter a single word. Love that one. Never Take Candy from a Stranger and Scream / Taste of Fear. Love that one. But it's been like 15 years since I've seen that, so I forget a lot about that. So I almost picked that one. I was like, why rewatch a movie? Instead, I'm going to pick one I've never seen, because I've seen a lot of Hammer, but there's a lot of Hammer out there, so there's a lot I haven't seen. So I picked something that seemed to be in the realm of Taste of Fear, and that was, it even has fear in the title, Fear in the Night. And of course, I bought it. I don't stream. I just buy shit instead.
Good man.
So this is directed by Jimmy Sangster, who wrote a lot of shit, but only directed 3 movies. And that's Horror, Frankenstein, Lust for a Vampire, and this. So before, I picked it, I bought it, stuck with it. I'm going to watch it. But then I went on Rotten Tomatoes, because that's what I like to do right before I watch it. And I saw no critic reviews, and 40% of audience reviews are positive. I said, uh-oh, that's not etched in stone. I don't take that, too seriously. But a small part of me went, uh-oh. So I put it in, and, I got good vibes from it right away. You get Judy Geeson, who I don't really know who she is, but she's got that Goldie Hawn vibe, cuteness thing working. And I dig the scarf in the hair. I always dug that look. And she's married to Ralph Bates, who is in this with Peter Cushing. So you got both Frankensteins in the movie. And I've seen Ralph Bates in a couple movies, and he seemed pretty charismatic. This one, he's a little subdued, Not until the very end, maybe he starts overacting a little bit. But he's pretty low-key in this movie. And he's a teacher who gets relocated to a boarding school that's ran by Peter Cushing. You've guys seen this movie. How many have seen this movie? All of us? Craig hasn't. I don't know how long it's been since you've seen it. But as I was watching this, first of all, I'd like to point out, so when Peter Cushing first shows up, And our girl here, Judy Geeson, I think her name is Peggy in the movie. She turns around and there he is, and he looks very tall in this movie. Probably because she's very short, and he's looking very creepy and menacing. And she's startled. Peter Cushing and all the classic guys do this so perfectly. They look scary, and then they smile right away. And then the character that they scared thinks, oh, he's all right. It was all my imagination, him just being spooky and scary. See, he's smiling and saying, how do you do? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. And then, all that creepiness just washes away. That's what the classic guys do. They go from the menacing to the smiling like that. So Judy Geeson, early on, she's attacked a few times by a guy with one hand. And I'm kind of intrigued, and I am worried because the thing is, I'm wondering what the motive is here. Why is she getting attacked? And why isn't this guy finishing the job? I'm going to start to strangle you, but then I'm going to run away. What's the motive here? So I'm like, they better tie up these loose ends by the end of the movie. All right, that's what I'm thinking, because that's a weird thing to do. And they kind of do. But I'm also wondering, is this all in her head? Because she is, kind of damaged goods. And, she has mental issues. So I'm thinking, is this like repulsion? Is this like the innocence where maybe it's in the woman's head and not really happening? But I'm pulled into the mystery. Plus, she's giving a great performance in this movie, this Judy Geeson woman. So then we got Joan Collins. She shows up and kills a rabbit. And she's still alive at 90 years old. Still alive. Last I checked, which was right before we started the taping, because when you're 90, you got to check every second to make sure they're still alive. Still alive. And in this movie, she's part beautiful, part devilish, and part pale and pasty in a weird way. She's all that rolled up in this
thing,
movie.
isn't it?
Yeah, she's very odd looking, but kind of hot at the same time. And then we get this scene where Cushing is getting creepy with Judy's hair and trying to take out this the scarf and everything, and we find out he has the fake hand. Oh, the plot thickens. Dun dun dun. And then before we know it, Cushing is chasing her throughout the school. And I should add that this school is empty, and Cushing, I think his name is Michael in the movie. He's the headmaster, but the place burned down. He rebuilt it, and there's no kids there, but he just uses sound effects and recordings of kids and pretends like he's the headmaster of kids that don't exist. But it's very effective, the sound effects of those kids. Very creepy and very effective. And you know what? This is before The Shining, but I do get Shining vibes with the emptiness and the creepiness and everything. And Cushing actually does go through a door, kind of like Jack Nicholson in The Shining in one scene. So anyways, he's chasing our girl Judy, Peggy, and she has a rifle and shoots him. And he goes down and then gets back up. And I said, holy shit, this guy's a fucking robot. This movie's about robots. Wow, because I don't know. I've never seen this movie. It could be about anything. So he gets up, then she shoots him again. He's still alive, but his glasses are shattered. Shattered in a way, if you can see, right there. So they're still intact, but shattered. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, the bullet would have completely destroyed those glasses. And if he was human, there'd be a hole in his head. The glasses wouldn't make, maybe the glasses are bulletproof. What's this movie about? And why did the one bullet shatter both equally? Is there a magic bullet theory? Was there a second shooter in the bushes? I don't know what's going on, but I hope they tie all these loose ends together, right? That's what I'm thinking. So we find out, sadly, it's not Westworld or Stepford Wives. It's not about robots. It's very much like Diabolique, which I like quite a bit and seen a few times. So but here's my problem with that scene. She passes out, and Peter Cushing, Michael, with the shattered glasses, walks towards her. What's he going to do? Cut. We don't know what he did. Did he says he just wanted to talk. Did he explain the situation to her? Did he wake her up and say, hey, I just wanted to talk? And if he did just want to talk, why did he pretend to be shot? Why did he fall down? And how did he shatter the glasses if supposedly there was blanks in the guns? He's not a robot. It was just blanks. So why were the glasses shattered? If he changed glasses to make them shattered, why did he do that if he just wanted to talk? And why did he pretend to get shot if he just wanted to talk? I don't know. So what did he do when she was passed out? Play with her hair a little bit more? I don't know. But when we see Judy again, she's like a zombie. Yes or no answers? I don't know. Yes. Yes. She's like the little girl in the Poltergeist when she's talking to the TV. I don't know. Yes. I don't know. Why is she like that? I don't fucking know. They don't really explain it either. So now I'm getting questions. See, I'm like, oh, maybe this is why it only has 40% positive reviews. So that doesn't get resolved. But I mean, there's twists and there's turns. There are twists and turns that are explained, thank God. And I like those. I like her performance. I love Peter Cushing. Is not in it that much. You can kind of see where it's going with the twists and turns. I won't give everything away on this 52-year-old movie in case you want to see it. Hey, I just saw it for the first time. I liked it. It loses a few points unless you guys can tell me, Laszlo, you're an idiot. He explained why the glasses were shattered and why he pretended to be shot. If you just paid attention more, you tell me. Was I missing something? I don't know. Maybe it's been 10 years since you've seen the movie and you don't remember. But that's where I am. I like it. I'm glad I bought it. I watched all the extras and I enjoyed that too. But there's just a couple loose ends I wish they would have tied together.
Typical Hammer, right?
Yes.
It's Jimmy Sangster's, as I went into quite a lot in the Frankenstein episode, my favorite people at Hammer, but he adored Devilique so much that he kept making those kind of thrillers, kept writing them, and oftentimes it feels like it was a twist that then was retconned into a movie more than a story that needed a twist.
You know what I think?
Taste of Fear's got one of the best twists ever, and I think they were always looking for that again. And I don't think they ever fit.
You know what I think, Davey? And by the way, you look very much like Michael Moore today.
Like far more left wing than
with the hat and everything. You look so much like Michael Moore right now. I think why they did the shattered glasses, it doesn't make that much sense. But why did they do it? Because Diabolique ends with the guy getting out of the bathtub with the fake white eyes in his eyes. And they wanted that kind of image in their movie. They didn't know how to go about it. They said, what if we make the glasses white and have him approach her? And that will be our Diabolique moment, bathtub moment. That's what I think.
And I think you would know Judy Jason if you checked out her filmography. I'm sure you've seen her in a lot more than you realize. She's in
Maybe
To Sir with Love and those kind of movies, but in Seminoid. She was in Dimwatch for Tyburn films. Loads of TV in the 80s. All sorts of American genre TV. I guarantee she was in.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, she's the main, and right up until what's the Rob Zombie film about witches?
Lords of Salem.
Lords of Salem. She's in that. So big long career in horror and television in the 80s. But you've seen her in a million things, just not realized.
Okay. 3 stars, 3 solid stars.
Good. Glad it's cool you liked it. Yeah, it's an interesting film. It's a nice addition to their filmography, I think.
Yes.
Cool. All right, Mr. Brown.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to stay on the Jimmy Sangster train here. And you're talking about Jimmy Sangster in reference to being involved as the backbone of horror, really, on the major classic Gothic horror stuff. I think I've always felt that Jimmy Sangster created a subgenre within Hammer that nobody else was doing. And once again, as Jamie said, very much influenced by Diabolique, also influenced by Alfred Hitchcock and Psycho. And he did about 5 films in the early 60s that were black and white, that were thrillers, that had twists, a lot of pulling from a lot of these films he was influenced by, from French Wave and so forth. And the one I decided to pick was one that was pretty prominent on video shelves in the 80s in the US, mainly because of its cover. The cover has a guy with an acetylene torch placing, and it's called The Maniac. This box does not do justice to the actual poster itself, and the guy in the poster looks very much like Laird Cregar from The Lodger, and to some extent, actually a skinnier Victor Buono, but Victor Buono had not been an actor at this point, so it's very ominous looking. The film Maniac, once again, he pushes the envelope. It starts out. It's like a summery day. You have the weeds are blowing. It's like actually summertime or late spring. 4 kids get off of the bus. 3 boys, 1 girl, all teenagers. The 3 boys go in one direction, with one of them taking his bike, which was on top of the bus. She walks down another path. Now, meanwhile, you've already been introduced to this guy that looks very much if you had had a love child with Donald Pleasance and Robert Englund. And I'm calling a sleazy, greasy guy. And he's sitting there a little unshaven, has his pickup truck. As she's walking down this road, he pulls out and starts following her. Obviously, she knows him. He offers to give her a ride home. Well, one of the boys she got off the bus with on the bicycle kind of looks back and says, something's not right. And he goes and follows the truck. You see the truck pulls over by a lake. He pulls the girl out of the truck into the high weeds. The kid comes in, sees this, and takes off. You already know that, okay, he's going, literally in the first 3-4 minutes of the film, there's a rape. And meanwhile, they had this really very much kind of like an Anatomy of a Murder type jazz score going on, this really bracing jazz music. Next to you cut, another truck driving down the road. The boy has gone and gotten the girl's father. Okay, they pull up to where sleazy, greasy guy's truck is. Just as she's coming out of the weeds, obviously she's been violated. Okay, and then he comes out looking like he's spent. So we kind of know what went on here. The father
And this is 1963, folks.
Great. And
keep that in mind.
Reaches into the car, gets out, pulls out a huge wrench, and you see him walk towards the guy. Cut 2. They're at the man's house. The daughter is up in the window of her room, obviously still looking traumatized. He is closing the door on his wooden garage. Now, just to preface that a second, soon as you see the film starting before the rape happens, the title, The Maniac, comes up. So you think, is the maniac, the fellow in the truck? No, it's not. The father brings this guy in the garage, pulls him out of the car, props him up against something, and just puts on a pair of heavy gloves, a welder's mask, and grabs an acetylene torch. Now, unless he was going to do some body work on his truck, we know this is not going to end well for this guy. And you hear the guy just screaming from the barn. Boom. It cuts to a few years later. Okay. Kerwin Matthews is an American who has just had an argument with his girlfriend, gets left off in this small town, and he can't get this small ferry across the way, so he goes into the local bar. Well, you'll eventually figure out the young girl behind the bar is the girl that was raped when she was younger. And Kerwin Matthews, meanwhile, the woman's mother, who's her stepmother, okay, has the hots for Kerwin Matthews. She just turned on by him, boom. So now we start going to La Diabolik. We have the femme fatale. Now, Kerwin Matthews, before I go any further, had a relatively decent career, but he's most known to genre people as being Sinbad, and the Adventure was a Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. He was in Jack the Giant Killer, the low-budget knockoff of that. He was also in 3 Worlds of Gulliver. But that being said, the seduction starts going on. So it really turns into a situation where it's seduction, deception, and then betrayal. And then a twist ending that just totally throws things out of key. The main reason is the mother is trying to seduce Kerwin Matthews to collaborate with her because she wants to, quote, run off with him now. Now, meanwhile, he's had some of a relationship with the daughter, and the daughter's staying back from this, but she's getting in the relationship with him because she wants him to help her break her husband, the guy with the blowtorch, the guy with the wrench, okay, who's been in an insane asylum since for the last number of years, and to break him out and get him free and start him on his own life, and he'll understand we're going to run off together. Now, you know that's not going to happen. And all I will say, I'm not going to go any further. It's a film worthy of watching it without giving too much away. And it does have betrayal. It does have a twist ending. Not as twisty as another one of Sangster's films, with Scream of Fear with Susan Strasberg, but the film runs a little slow, but it's worth the payoff. And the scenery, the photography, there's a big mine in the end, there's a big chase scene and so forth, and it's a worthwhile ride. And like as I said, Jimmy Sangster had like 4 or 5 films he did that were heavily influenced by all this type of style of filmmaking, and they're all very good. And it's an offshoot road for Hammer Films. One of the interesting characters in the film, other than Kerwin Matthews, is George Patel. Is it George Patel, who played basically Indian characters? He was in The Mummy. He was in The Stranglers of Bombay. In this one, he actually plays a French inspector. And so it's a nice, smooth riding film, worthwhile watch, and it should open your eyes to some other genres within other styles of films in Hammer. There you go.
Yeah, it's a good one. Craig, Jamie, have you guys seen this one?
Yes, I have.
It's good. I enjoy it. I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
Kerwin
And
Matthews.
there's obviously the famous cycle of thrillers from Hammer, as you were saying, but there's even that subsection of those that Jimmy Sangster does, where the killer wears a weird outfit like that and the snorkel.
Yeah.
So there's an even more bizarre subsets, like deeper and deeper into kind of just changing the names, because he was having to write so many scripts at that point. He was just scrubbing out names, changing a few details here and there. It's a wonder they're so good. They were churning them out so fast.
Yeah.
And hey, Kerwin Matthews should have had a much bigger career, I thought, because he was great in all of those genre films.
And he was in a lot of big budget films too, but in a more supporting role.
Yeah, but those were his big 3, as you
Good
mentioned.
actor. He had the look, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just never really kept going from. It was in Pirates of Blood River. I think that was his only other Hammer.
I just
Pirates of
watched
Blood
that
River.
recently for the first time.
Yeah.
And once again, this back Cameron Matthews is with Columbia Pictures. Columbia had all these distributions for
We're
Hammer.
doing them. Yeah.
This was all a big Columbia thing and so forth and so on. They were promoting their actors as well.
Cool. All right, Craig, your choice for today.
Okay, thanks. When Davy provided the list of all the Hammer movies to choose from as I was scrolling through, I came upon the movie that I picked, and I saw it once, probably at least once when I was really little, but not since then. So this was kind of pretty much watching fresh. So my choice was from 1961, and it is The Terror of the Tongs, as you can see, starring Christopher Lee. This was again from 1961, distributed by Columbia Pictures, kind of like what Dan had said, and directed by Anthony Bushell and written by that Jimmy Sangster guy. Again, it's like, geez, he's really getting around. But this is it's not a horror movie, and it's almost more like a mafia movie, except that it takes place in 1910 Hong Kong. So one of the things, of course, that you know going in before you even watch it is that this movie is going to have a lot of yellow face in it, and I have to say that I thought Christopher Lee's makeup was pretty good. Whenever they would show him close up and everything, I thought he looked pretty good. According to what I read, when he came in to make the movie, he was coming off a holiday from Italy, and so he had a nice tan, and he was concerned about playing an Asian fellow with having such a nice bronzed look, but and it said that his makeup was not pleasant that he had to go through. But I thought he looked pretty good. One thing that is cool is whenever he's standing among among his underlings and the other people, he just towers above everyone because of how tall he is. And so that's kind of cool. A lot of times, though, Christopher Lee is in a throne, almost like giving orders to his underlings and speaking, of course, in his menacing baritone. So it's a cool look for him, at least for this movie. But the general plot, it's in 1910, and at this time, Hong Kong is under British control. So there's a gentleman whose name is Mr. Ming, who is on a boat coming over to Hong Kong. The captain is a British gentleman played by Jeffrey Toone, and his character's name is Captain Jackson Sale. What Ming is a kind of a person in the underground resistance of the fighting against the Tongs. And the way that, I mean, at least the way that I had looked into it, it's basically like it was like the mafia. They were organized crime they would smuggle in opium and whatnot, and just terrorize and people who didn't pay up their protection fees or whatever. They would usually get fingers cut off, and they would have these sort of ritualized assassinations that would happen in the streets, where it witnessed in front of lots and lots of people. But because they knew that it was being perpetrated by the Tongs, the crowds would always be, I saw nothing, I know nothing, I don't know what happened or anything. So right away, though, in the beginning, when Mr. Ming is in this, I'm watching, and I was like, wow, that guy looks familiar. I can't, who is this guy? So I look it up on my phone. This is Bert Kwok. And I was like, why is that? And I look it up.
It's Kato.
It's Kato from the Pink Panther movies. So I was really hoping he would just start beating the shit out of the captain randomly at this, but that didn't happen. But that was kind of funny, because I as soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, he looks familiar, and it's like, oh, Kato. But so that was cool. But while Ming is on the boat, he slips. He gives to Captain Sale a gift of a Chinese poetry book, and he slips in a little note inside this book. The book is a gift to Jackson Sale's daughter Helena. They live in Hong Kong, so you the viewer don't really, you have no idea what the note entails. No sooner does Ming get off the boat, and here's one of those ritualized killings. So there's a Tong member, maybe, I don't know, 15 yards or so away from him. I mean, it's some of it's kind of funny. He kind of sort of like announces that he's going to come after him and kill him with this it's a hatchet, like a small hatchet, and everybody's just like, backs away. The guy comes running to him. Mr. Ming has a gun, so it's like an Indiana Jones type thing, where you see it's like, just shoot him. Of course, he shoots the guy a few times, but now that this guy's pretty unstoppable and still manages to hatchet him. Some other Tong members that are in secret come to search Ming's body to look for this note, and of course they don't find anything. To safeguard this, they go back to, they figure, well, it's got to be somewhere. I think they ransack the boat and they can't find anything, so they go back to the captain's residence. Here, his daughter Helena has the book and doesn't notice this note that's inside, but the captain's housekeeper is part of the resistance, and takes the note, keeps it with her, and takes it away. Some of the Tong members then come over to the captain's house to ransack it looking for the note. And as a total shock to me, they kill his daughter. I did not see that coming. So they stab and kill her. And so I was stunned that they were killing the first female character that you see in the movie, because I thought she was going to be one of the main characters, but definitely not so. The captain, of course, is distraught, goes to the police. The police can't help him. There's corruption rampant in the streets. Finally, a Tong member um, comes to kill him, and in one of, at least I kind of laughed at it. The Tong member is about ready to kill him, and he says, "Well, since you're going to die, I might as well tell you everything that's going on." So he tells him how the Tongs smuggle in heroin, and they don't really look at the British ships because the British are more trustworthy, and so he kind of like gives away all the secrets and everything. And little does he know that this Tong assassin gets whacked on the head by his wife, a character named Lee. She is played by Yvonne was that Monwar, and was forced to marry him, and so she jumped at the chance to bump him off. She decides to help Captain Sale with his revenge against the Tong. So eventually the captain gets captured and tortured by the Tong to see what he knows of this list or anything. Of course, he doesn't know anything. Some of this also made me think of the movie To Be or Not to Be, except without the zaniness of the goings on there, because you had the resistance of the characters and everything. But finally, once the captain is able to escape, he, with Lee's help, and with some of the other members of the resistance, they tell him that there's going to be an attempt on the captain's life, but in doing so, it may be the impetus to finally rile the people up against and to overtake the Tong. So same thing sort of happens to the captain. A guy's going to run up to him and hatchet him. He shoots him and takes him out. But then the people sort of now revolt, and start fighting against the Tong members that are there, and anyone who's siding with them. Finally, the fight comes to the lair of Christopher Lee, Chung King, his character, and the ending to the movie is quite abrupt. I mean, it's the people are basically crashing down the doors, and Chung King has one of his lieutenants basically stab him in the back, killing him, and then the movie's over. So it's a very abrupt ending. The movie's only about 76 minutes, and like Jamie, when I watch these movies, I also look up the Rotten Tomato score. This one was only 19%, so I was a little bit nervous going into this, but I had a lot of fun watching this. I mean, I took this for what it was, and it was just a fun little sort of an adventure crime mafia movie, just without Italians. They just happened to be Chinese, or you could tell some of the other that were British actors with some makeup on. Those people you could kind of tell, but Christopher Lee, as I said, was really was well done with his makeup. But I would give this, at least 3.5, 3.75 out of 5. I thought this was fun, and it's a quick movie. You're in and out. It was very bright and colorful. Any time that they would show scenes inside the Tong headquarters, or in these bars and such, where they had dancing girls and things like that, it was bright, and they had nice bright colors, and well lit scenery and such. So I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with Terror of the Tongs.
It's a good one, and Hammer fans will recognize Yvonne Monlor from Brides of Dracula and that other
Circus of Horrors.
There's a bar. That's the one. Thank you, Dan. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's a good one. Fun one.
Although Jeffrey Tim's the main character. Don't know why he's not higher on the bill, but he's
Yeah.
the main character.
Yeah, he's. I mean, Christopher Lee's not in the movie a terrible amount, but whenever he is in, I mean, of course, he commands his presence commands everyone else. And as I
Well, that's
said,
like when he does the Fu Manchu movies, the same thing. He's
Yeah,
maybe like 15 minutes, if that, in the movie, but he's just every scene he's in, it's just
but
like,
he's just so cool, sitting on the throne, giving orders, or as I said, whenever he's standing, he's just a giant among all these men, and whether that was naturally or if he was standing on something to make him look even bigger, but he's very imposing looking.
I mean, it was 6'4" legit.
Yeah.
And it was rake thin, which helped you look even taller, obviously. And yeah, and smartly they always put him with short actors. You know, when you're standing next to Michael Ripper, who's about 5'4", you know, it really helps.
Michael Rivers not very tall at all.
But it also was one of those where at first where I was watching it, I had thought, wow, this is one of those movies, boy, you can't make something like this anymore with all the the yellow face and and everything in it. But then I kind of thought, they were doing this well into the 80s, with Raiders of the Lost Ark or Joel Grey and in Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. So I mean, and with or even more so, not necessarily with the makeup, but actors speaking in exaggerated accents when you know that they don't, like the guy who I can't think of his real name, but the guy who plays Wong in the Doctor Strange movies. I mean, his natural speaking voice sounds very Americanized.
His real name's Wong.
Yeah, but his natural speaking voice is very Americanized, like when you hear him in The Martian, but then when you hear him in Doctor Strange,
He's English.
Yeah.
It's not that natural an American voice. He's from England.
Cool. All right, Davey. Ready to talk a little bit about a guy named Satan?
The blood on Satan's claw. That's not even a hammer. Yeah, I mean, nice, easy one. This is one of my top 5 hammers, top 10 horrors. So, chance to talk about it. Devil Rides Out, just such a great film. Absolutely essential. 10 out of 10. That's the review. Don't really need much more than that. Just go and watch it if you haven't. But to give a little more than that, Craig was talking about Christopher Lee being imposing and holding the screen. He's never done it as well as he does here as the Duke. This is a breathtaking bit of filmmaking, not written by Jimmy Sangster. So if you can't get Jimmy Sangster, Richard Matheson's not a bad replacement. Screenwriting legend, absolute icon, and of books as well, of course. I Am Legend, literally. So Richard Matheson comes in to write a script here. And it's the most amazingly tight script where in the first 7 minutes, we meet our protagonists, 2 good guys. We meet our antagonist, the bad guy. We meet somebody in the middle who could fall either way, who was a friend of the good guys, could go bad. We meet the damsel in distress. We see the set piece places that everything's going to take place, and we know the stakes, all within the first 7 minutes, and it never feels rushed. It's a real wonderful bit of writing from Matheson to adapt the book. Speaking of, it's from the book by Dennis Waitley. Here's my paperback that I got when I was a lad. This book is one of the most racist things not distributed by the Ku Klux Klan you'll ever read in your life. Oh boy, does he like the N-word. But it's one of those old school, very Rudyard Kipling colonial type white Europeans are the way forward kind of thing. So the villain in it is called Mikato. And in the book, he's presented as a very stereotypical practitioner of the dark arts, and he's presented as a savage from Africa made good. In this film, they wisely get rid of the racist parts, and if you can't have a racist black caricature, you might as well get Charles Gray, who's pretty much the opposite of that. And he knows exactly what he's in. He's having the time of his life as the bad guy. And to mention it, Christopher Lee gets to be the good guy for once, which is another major reason to see this film. Hammer offered him the Mikado part, and he said, geez, that's all I ever get is the villain part. Can I just be the good guy this one time? And you can almost see him relishing, absolutely relishing the fact that really the part of the Duke de Richelieu, who he plays here, is the sort of part that Peter Cushing would normally get. The dignified, smart, intelligent guy who knows how to deal with problems and fights evil. That's not who you cast Christopher Lee as normally. So you can tell he's so happy to be in this role. He loved the book. He was friends with Dennis Wheatley, and he kind of pushed this along production. Couple of props actually. Here's my original copy of it, which I got for my 15th birthday, and it is indeed Laserdisc, the Hammer Laserdisc set with Quatermass in the Pits, Devil Rides Out, and Dracula Prince of Darkness, which I don't think it works anymore, to be honest. It's got real bad laser rot, but I still love to have to keep this forever.
How old were you when you got that, Davey?
15.
Nice.
Yeah, my mum got me that for Christmas, and the score by James Bernard, who also did the score for a couple of movies we talked about there, and a good few from last time, is brilliant as well. Here's a picture disc of the theme, which has the Goat of Mendes on it. And anyone who has seen the film will know that that's actually the devil. It's the proper devil. None of your silly red makeup and all. This is your old school blood and Satan's claw, hooved devil. And that iconic scene where Christopher Lee realizes that the devil's been conjured. The Goat of Mendes, the devil himself. It's just majestic. That is literally the name of the B-side on here, the Goat of Mendes, the devil himself. That's how iconic it is that they've called the track that. The film, very briefly, don't need a big long synopsis. These two guys are part of high society. Christopher Lee's a duke, and their friend Simon has been taken in by a cult, essentially, of Satan worshippers. And Christopher Lee, as the duke, kind of knows what's going on. You can tell he's a man of the world. It comes from the novels, a series of 11 novels. So the Duke's kind of had a million different adventures. And he's going to rescue his friend Simon, and they're going to defeat the forces of evil, the devil himself, as it were. Now, you might think the devil's pretty good going for a big bad of a movie. He's enough to get your hands on. They beat the devil about 25 minutes into the movie. You think, where do you go from there, beating the devil? Well, the angel of death turns up then. Christopher Lee has to sort him out as well. It's the most badass thing. Everything in it is tight. It's tight as a drum. Every scene develops into the next perfectly. The stakes get higher and higher as we introduce the damsel in distress character. The stakes get higher for her soul. It's very Exorcist-like in regards to evil versus good. It's not just a case of you might die. It's a case of a battle for your eternal soul kind of thing. There's a lot of Exorcist vibes in this. There's a great sequence where Christopher Lee has to make a chalk circle and do all kind of sacraments around it, which is quite progressive for the time because they're not using just Catholic imagery or Christian imagery. He's using everything in the book. He's using Egyptian chants. He's using Judeo-Christian stuff. He's using anything, and absolutely anything. It also has the notion that non-believers can be how evil gets in. So kind of themes that for 1968 you didn't really get in a lot of films, but we have seen in a million movies since then. It's really, really cheesy when it comes to a couple of effects in that scene. There's a giant spider that turns up, and that spider's about this size, and they've just put it in front of a green screen. But for the 2012 re-release, they did go back and touch up the effects a little, and I was glad that they just touched them up. They didn't go back in and CGI anything. They just kind of did the matting a bit better, so nothing looks as silly as it did in the original version, which crosses the line from charming to kind of takes you out of the movie in a few places. But the 2012 remaster, superb. And again, it's basically Christopher Lee versus the Devil and the Angel of Death at the same time, with Charles Gray thrown in to kind of camp it up in a lot of places. Which I don't know, if you just put that on the box, I think it sells itself. Christopher Lee versus the Devil and the Angel of Death. It works perfectly. It's full of great iconic moments that have been sampled on a million metal albums. The scene where he's casting spells and whatnot. That's just, it's gobbledygook. But Christopher Lee always claimed that he found it in a legitimate 17th century book that he discovered that had real incantations to beat the devil. And so Christopher Lee's going, Uriel, Seraphine, he's doing all this stuff. And he believes it, and he's working so hard on it that you believe it too. The film just goes along at a hell of a pace without, again, feeling rushed. It just feels like everything in it builds to the next scene, which is something quite rare when you actually look at the structure and shape of a lot of horror films. Everything leads up to something thematically. There's a great theme of motherhood that kind of ties into it. There's also a kind of brotherhood, fraternity theme that really ties in, and loyalty of friends. The cast are all fantastic. There's a rather bizarre bit of casting though, because Paul Eddington's in it, and I don't think he'll mean anything in America, but he's a very famous sitcom actor in the UK. The Good Life and Yes Minister, Yes Prime Minister. So for him to be in here, it would be like, I don't know, I don't know, some who's the sitcom guy in America who would never be in this kind of horror movie? Phil Silvers of the time, I don't know, something like that. It's just bizarre seeing him in this fighting the devil of the Angel of Death. And that part does look great when the Angel of Death comes in and can't look it in the eyes, and don't look in the eyes. And Christopher Lee is selling his arse off for everything here. He's making sure that you believe everything he's selling, which again is something that he wouldn't always do if he didn't believe in the script. He kind of let you know it. But the reverse is true here. If he believes in this, which he does, he gives you arguably his best ever performance. I think it's certainly a perfect performance. May not be my favorite, might be actually, but it's certainly up there regardless. And along with the Wicker Man, Lord Summerisle, he always cited it as the favorite part of his they ever played. Unfortunately, it didn't do very well. It bombed in America because they didn't like having devil in the title. I think it was released as The Devil's Bride in America, something like that. But it didn't do well. So that put the kibosh on further installments of the Duke de Richelieu's adventures. But it did indirectly leave him open to do, funnily enough, as mentioned, the Fu Manchu films that were starting just later that year. So all kind of ties together. And yeah, so it's just a mid-tier, a mid-period Hammer. So it's not that early great period of Frankenstein's Dracula's from the very early days. It's not the revival in the 70s where things are a last stand. It's that middle period where we're getting some strange one-offs and taking a chance on things and doing sci-fis and doing more offbeat things and just seeing what sticks. As we know, they had their biggest hit ever about this time with 10,000 Years BC with Kill Welsh. Yeah. So it's that period where, okay, if the kids aren't into Dracula and Frankenstein anymore, let's see if we can just find something that will stick. This just didn't, but I don't know why, because it's a perfect film. And 10 out of 10, again, this will be certainly on my list of nominations for Hall of Fame candidacy when we come to it next time, I'm sure. Or maybe not next time, but certainly very shortly into the process. just an essential hammer, and I think an essential horror film in general, especially if you like British horror. And it's also, I think, where Gothic meets folk horror, especially that scene with the devil out in the woods,
Yeah, for sure.
with Charles Gray and whatnot. That scene itself could just as easily be exactly the same spot as Blood and Satan's Claw, but a couple hundred years later. So yeah, masterpiece.
Yeah, it's a top 5 Hammer for me, without a doubt.
That middle period that Davy's talking about, the one-offs, that was like a really entertaining time because you had the Reptile and other films. The one Quatermass film came out, which is a one shot at that point as well. So that was like all kinds of interesting new things they were playing out with.
Well, they were getting in American stars like Joan Fontaine was coming over to do a Hammer film, which it's just bizarre. Tallulah Bankhead was doing Hammer. It's just a bizarre period. It would never have happened just a few years earlier. But
they did do it in the 50s though, but they were kind of like Brian Donlevy was in one.
Well, yeah, I did say starred. I'm not counting Brandon Levy and Dean Jagger. Come on. In the same breath as Joan Fontaine, for goodness sake.
Brian Donlevy was in Bojes though, and he was good. So
Well, it was. Yeah, I won't go into my dislike of Brandon Levy tonight. I'm in too good a mood.
okay, sorry.
And I know that movie predates it, but every time I see Charles Gray, I just want to take a jump to the left and then a step to the right. And
do you know the great thing is, Craig? He acts pretty much the same. So
Yeah.
he's
or as Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever,
or his other Bond character in You Only Live
You Only
Twice.
Live Twice.
Yeah. He basically plays the same kind of charming, slightly evil character and everything. So even here, he's got that great scene where he goes to introduce himself to the lady of the house, and she knows that he's a representative of Satan, and he knows that she knows. But instead of being threatening, he's just, "Hello, my dear. It's very nice to meet you. Would you like my card?" He's got a great line when he says, when she throws him out, "I won't be back, but something will tonight." And it's the fucking angel of death. That's what it's all. Jesus. It's just one of those films that's more badass than you think this film could possibly be. And every 5 minutes, something happens that makes you go, "Oh, fucking badass."
And that movie, I have seen that one. I have seen it. I watched it when it was, and I did enjoy that. I like where they did the ritual and everything,
Awesome.
like you said, with the chalk and drawing and
Yeah, there's a lot of classic scenes in that film.
Yeah, Christopher Lee giving Rex the two vials, one of water, holy water, and one of mercury. So these will protect you against the forces of darkness. And Rex says, "What do you have then?" Christopher Lee just looks at him and goes, "I have other means of protection." Just like, oh, he doesn't even explain himself. He's just like, "Oh, I will sort it. Don't you worry, son." It's like he knows he's badass. It is a brilliant performance.
And cool, like you said, cool to see him as the hero for once.
Yeah, an out and out hero, not a kind of grumpy hero like one we might hear about in a minute. Or I don't know, what do you call Rasputin a hero? I don't think so. Hey, he was Russia's greatest love machine. So
last time I watched it with Night of the Demon. I had a double feature night. That was a good night. They go well together.
Yeah, it's a fun double bill. Night of the Demon is another top 5 horror for me. Hey, there's a good example of an American being brought in, done really well. Dana Andrews.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But that's not Hammer. So, Pete, what did you pick?
So, 1964, Terrence Fisher directs The Gorgon.
Oh, man.
Right there. Always liked this film. Hadn't seen it in a number of years. Always good to revisit. So this has got an all-star cast. So you got Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing in this film together, although they don't appear in a lot of scenes together, unfortunately, but it's still good to see them when they do appear together. Barbara Shelley, the wonderful Barbara Shelley's in this as well as a whole cat, all sorts of people. A lot of faces you'll recognize from other films in here. But basically, everybody knows the story of the mythological Medusa, right? So that's the Gorgon, the strange lady with the snakes, and you stare into her eyes, she turns you to stone, right? So that's the whole premise here. So basically, this takes place in a village called Vandorf. And what's happening here, you're getting these murders that are just popping up left and right. People are getting turned to stone, but it's all this is being hidden, right? So nobody really knows why these people are dying, and all these weird excuses are being given for them dying that aren't actually what's happening, right? So it starts off with this young couple, this painter and his girlfriend who's his model, and he's like doing a nude portrait of her. That's how it starts off. And then, after they're finished, she keeps like saying, well, when are we going to get married? When are we going to get married? When are we going to get married? And he's like, oh, I don't know if we can do it yet. I don't know if I'm getting ready to get married, whatever. And then she announces to him that, well, I'm pregnant, right? So here is pregnancy out of wedlock in 1964. Again, this stuff didn't happen all that often in other films. I think Hammer was just going places that like you didn't see other studios doing. So now once he finds that out, he's like, oh, well, now I'm going to have to go find your father and ask for your hand in marriage. I got to do the right thing. So he races out of the house, goes running off into the woods in the middle of the night. Full moon is up. Oops, that should be a little, clue that something's going to happen. She eventually goes running after him. She stumbles upon this old house, right? These ruins, not really ruins, this old house, whatever. And she comes upon something. She stares at it. She screams. She turns to stone. She's dead, gone. We don't know what happened to the boyfriend. He goes and runs off. So the next morning, it's reported they found her dead, murdered, but nobody mentions anything about her turning to stone. They also find the boyfriend hanging in a tree. What the hell's going on, right? Then we meet Peter Cushing, who's like a local, it's like a doctor. I think he's like some kind of surgeon, but he's also kind of like the coroner, sort of. So he's giving his expert opinion on what happened to the woman. And he doesn't mention anything about her turning to stone. She was murdered, right? So then they assume that, and of course, they find the boyfriend. So they assume that he murdered her and then killed himself. Then they bring the father in, right? So they're going to they're in front of the town judge and the police and all that. And they're like, even though he's dead, he was the murderer here. And the father, they're questioning the father. The father's like, he would never do something like that. He loved her, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so that eventually the father winds up he starts moseying around. He winds up running into whatever it is out in the woods, stumble upon the house. He gets turned to stone. Then we get introduced to Cushing's assistant, Barbara Shelley. And we get introduced to the father's other son, so the brother of the one who was found hung. And he winds up getting into like sort of a interesting relationship with Barbara Shelley's character. More and more people start dying, right? He also then starts sneaking around, goes to the house where he knew his father was. And he sort of runs into this creature who they start calling Megara. Now it's this whole mythology. There's this creature, Megara, that only comes out when the moon is full, and she's been here for a while. And that's, it's like this secret that nobody wants the rest of the town to know for fear of panic and whatnot. So he comes across her, but he doesn't actually look at her, but he sort of sees her in a mirror. So he's kind of affected, but he doesn't turn to stone, but he starts to age a little bit. So without giving away the ending of the film, so you go through this movie, you do start to see the Gorgon more and more. I will admit, probably the worst part of the film is the makeup and the really, really fake looking bad snakes in her hair, because they're like these snakes that are just sitting there, and every time she moves, they just kind of wiggle a little bit. So it looks kind of ridiculous. She's not very scary, but what happens to all of her victims is, and this becomes like a really interesting, well, who is this Gorgon or Megara creature? Then we detect that Peter Cushing's character, is actually in love with his assistant, played by Barbara Shelley. And you start to get the impression that he's kind of protecting her a little bit. She's falling in love with the son of the brother of the other one who was killed earlier. And the rest of the second half of the film, you're trying to put all the pieces together of who actually is this creature, because then they start to tell you, because then of course we get Christopher Lee's character comes in, who's like a professor, and he's actually the tutor of the guy, the other son. And so he comes in, they start working together to try and figure out all the clues. And he detects that this creature is actually, or whoever it is, turns into this creature when the moon is full. So then you start going through the whole rest of the movie. By like maybe 3/4 of the way through the film, if not a little bit earlier, you kind of know who it is who's turning into the Gorgon. I'm not going to give it up for whoever hasn't seen this film, but the whole last like half hour is really, really well done, and it's good. It's good to see Christopher Lee in this kind of role, because he's not a bad guy. He's sort of one of the good guys here, but he's this kind of like bumbling professor guy who obviously some of the people from the town don't think too highly of. But very, very cool film. Really nice atmosphere. Very, very well shot. I really like the scenes where they're in this old mansion or house where the Gorgon keeps popping up. The cinematography is very, very well done. Like I said, the worst thing about it is the actual Gorgon makeup and snakes itself, but very, very cool film. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. I enjoy this a lot. I would give this an easy 4 out of 5 star. Really good film.
I only gave it 2.5 in my book.
Really?
Oh, it's
Yeah.
easily 4.
Yeah.
For me as
I remember
well.
it being a little sluggish to my taste. I don't know.
It's one of those
Pretty
films
accurate.
where the sluggishness doesn't bother me because I love the character actors so much. Just getting to watch Peter Cushing, Barbara Shelley, Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
It's just such a. If they were played by lesser actors, I would probably have it down there as well. Although it's funny, I mentioned on the last episode how Hammer always set their films in this fake version of Europe that doesn't exist. They do that again here, as Pete mentioned, just make up a place name. And I mentioned how they would just have every character called either Carl, Hans, or Paul. The 3 main cast members here are Carl, Hans, and Paul. They did not put in much effort. And of course, the second Doctor again pops up. Patrick Troughton plays the police detective in it. Who's pretty great in his few scenes that he's in. But you're right, Christopher Lee gets to play a kind of interesting part here where he is a good guy, but he's a grumpy fuck.
Yeah.
It's almost the genesis of the relationship that he would have with Cushing in Horror Express. I think you can see that kind of relationship, where it's mutual respect, but leave me alone, please. There's a bit more of that going on. But yeah, brilliant little movie.
Yeah, it's a fun little film. I really like it as one of their one-offs. It's very, very cool. And yeah, like I said, I think the first time I saw it, I pretty much figured out who was the Gorgon. You get to a point where it's like it can't be anybody else. And then you really start to see Cushing's character's ulterior motives really kind of come into play, and then everything that kind of happened up to that point just totally makes sense. So yeah, good fun film. I think quite a bit.
Cinematography always helped Hammer films. I mean, it was lush.
Beautiful looking film. Yeah.
As they work with it, always comes out. So I'm just curious about that. There's been no mention of any 4K upgrades, any of these things, have they?
No, there hasn't. But for the simple reason, again, that they're owned by so many different companies. But Studio Canal own a good chunk of the catalog, and they do release a lot of 4Ks. So I think it's a matter of when, not if. And I would not be surprised if something like Dracula, Prince of Darkness was first, because they own that. That's a sumptuous looking film.
And then Indicator or Powerhouse, don't they own the rights to some stuff as well?
They're the Sony Columbia ones, and they've not got a revised deal. And I don't think that level of film has got a 4K. If I remember right, a lot of them were from 2K transfers.
Yes.
Although I think Revenge of Frankenstein was from a 4K scan. But yeah, I think we're way off from Indicator doing that for the Hammers. But Studio Canal could see doing it as upgrades, because we've now got some Amicus 4Ks with the 2 Doctor Who films and Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. So it's kind of weird that we've got Tygon 4Ks, we've got Amicus 4Ks, but we don't have any from Hammer.
Yeah, that is kind of strange.
And my cat Fred wants to know why we didn't pick Shadow of the Cat. So it's
which is maybe Barbara Shelley's best
Yes.
performance for Hammer.
Happy, Fred? Okay.
She's so good. She's so good. I mean, she just like every scene she's in, she just
She's
steals.
amazing. She's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the kind of unsung hero of the early years of Hammer, like late 50s to mid 60s.
Yep.
Yeah, great actress.
Yep, for sure. So there you have it, everybody. Our 5 kind of one-off picks from Hammer. We'll be revisiting this theme again in the future because there's so many movies to choose from. So, but for now, for next time, 2 weeks from tonight, we will be talking about and reviewing Late Night with the Devil, which is premiering on Shudder starting tomorrow. And this is a film directed by Colin and Cameron Cairns, I guess. And this is, I guess, kind of like a found footage film. I'll read it to you exactly as it says. Found footage film with a documentary prologue focuses on a Halloween night in 1977 talk show episode in which the host, the ambitious Jack Delroy, invites a purportedly possessed girl onto the program in an attempt to boost ratings. That sounds like fun. So
if people want to do a little bit of homework, watch Ghost Watch as well. 1992 British TV horror film.
Didn't that scare the pants off of everyone?
Yes.
Never seen
and
it.
we can go into that in a couple of weeks, but certainly that will tie into that very much. So.
And there was another American one at one point, not as called something WAGD Halloween special, and it was they go to a haunted house, a supposedly haunted house, and it just goes awry, and they're like kind of live with the studio, and that kind of became a cult following here in the States. A lower budget film, but nonetheless, another attempt.
So that's what we'll be talking about next time. So till then, if you have any Hammer horror or non-horror favorites, feel free to comment on them down in the comments below, or let us know what you think of some of our picks today. Hopefully you found a couple that maybe you haven't seen that you may want to go check out. They're all worth seeing for sure. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together. All the damn time. The Go to Mendes is here. I'll make sure to announce him at the end of the episode. He's
the devil himself.
Devil himself. For Dan Brown, Craig Kaminski, Jamie Laszlo, Davy Gallagher, and the GOAT himself.
Yeah, he's the GOAT.
I'm Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody, here on the Monsters Den. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Back again.
Bye.
Take care.
We love the devil. Yeah.